My family accused me of faking my qualifications. They brought proof, but when the judge looked at my cases, her face changed. You are brilliant. The meeting room smelled of aged wood and expensive fragrance. I sat down at the large mahogany table, hands clasped in my lap, watching my sister Claire fumble with her pearl necklace across from me. My parents flanked her on either side, their features set in the same expression of righteous vindication. We have evidence, my mother told the three-member panel. Her speech held the tone she'd cultivated over the years, implying that anyone who disagreed with her was either foolish or purposely ignorant. Our daughter has been lying about her qualifications for years. She has never taken the bar exam. Judge Evelyn West sat in the center of the panel, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. To her left was David Grant, a senior partner at one of Boston's oldest firms, and to her right was Detective James Walker from the Fraud Division. All three had manila files open in front of them. Miss Harper, Judge West remarked, her eyes meeting mine. You've been incredibly silent during these proceedings. Would you wish to reply to the allegations? I held her stare but said nothing. My lawyer, Andrew Collins, had urged me to let them speak and develop their case. Allow them to be confident. Claire leaned forward, her designer blouse rustling. Your Honor, my sister has always been a family disappointment. She barely finished high school. She attended a little-known Ohio community college. The idea that she could pass the Massachusetts bar exam is ridiculous. My father nodded emphatically. We tried to help her, he added, his voice thick with contrived anguish. But she's been living in a dream world. When we discovered she was genuinely representing clients, we felt we had to act. Judge West's demeanor remained bland, but something sparked in her eyes as she opened the file in front of her, and I noticed her face alter. The slight widening of her eyes, the pause in her breathing, the way her fingers tightened on the edge of the paper. Miss Harper, she said slowly. You argued before me last year, the Fitzgerald case. The room fell silent. I remember you quite clearly, Judge West continued, her voice changing. I described it as the most amazing defense I'd seen in my 30 years on the bench. Why is your family alleging that you are not a licensed attorney? My mother's face turned pale, and Claire's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for oxygen. Perhaps, I murmured slowly, speaking for the first time. We should start from the beginning. Growing up as the youngest of two daughters in the Harper household meant living in Claire's shadow. My sister was everything my parents desired. Beautiful, charming, and effortlessly popular. She got straight A's without studying, dated the football team captain, and was accepted to Yale before her senior year of high school even ended. My parents made it clear which daughter was the prize and which was the consolation. Claire was blonde and willowy, while I was dark-haired and solid. And where she excelled naturally, I struggled and fought for every B-. At dinner parties, my mother would occasionally mention the oops baby after her third glass of wine. Why aren't you more like your sister, became my mother's favorite refrain, delivered with increasing frustration as I moved through my teenage years. The comparison crystallized during the summer after my sophomore year of high school, when Claire had just finished her first year at Yale Law School, and my parents hosted a celebration dinner at our house in suburban Connecticut. I served appetizers in a black dress my mother had bought especially for the occasion, playing the role of helpful younger sister while Claire held court about constitutional law in her summer internship at a prestigious New York firm. And what about you? Mrs. Jackson from next door spoke, her voice tripping with polite disinterest. What are your intentions for college? Before I could respond, my mother interjected, Oh, she'll probably go to the community college downtown. Claire chuckled as the dismissive tone in her voice wounded more than the words themselves. That tinkling sound everyone found so delightful. Not everyone is cut out for higher education, she said, patting my shoulder. There's no shame in knowing your limitations. Something hardened in me that night. I was 16 years old, with 2 years of high school still ahead of me, and I resolved that one day, I would make them regret every condescending word. My parents made it clear that Claire's Ivy League expenses had depleted the family education fund, so I kept my head down, improved my grades as much as I could, and began looking into colleges that I could actually afford. Whatever I wanted to do next, I'd have to pay for myself. When I left, my parents sent me a check for $3,500, which my father explicitly stated was all the support we could afford to provide. Lakewood Community College in rural Ohio was not prestigious or impressive, but it was affordable and far enough away from Connecticut that I didn't have to witness Claire's continued rise. Claire's Yale education cost $55,000 per year, but I didn't say anything, I just took the money and left. At Lakewood, I discovered something surprising. When I wasn't constantly compared to my sister, I could actually focus. I took a full course load and worked 25 hours a week at a local diner. My grades improved, and by the second semester, I had a perfect GPA. My advisor, Professor Linda Carter, a former prosecutor who had left the legal field following her husband's death and settled into teaching paralegal studies, discovered something in me that my family never did. "You've got a natural instinct for legal reasoning," she informed me one afternoon in her office. "Have you ever considered law school?" I chuckled bitterly. "My sister got to Yale Law, and I'm the family disappointment, remember?" "Who told you this?" Professor Carter's brows narrowed beneath her wire-rimmed glasses. "Everyone who matters." She reclined back in her chair. "Let me tell you about law school. It's not important where you start. It depends on how hard you're willing to work. And based on my observations, you work harder than anybody else in this program." The talk stuck with me because, for the first time in my life, someone felt I was more than just Harper's kid. Over the following 2 years, Professor Carter became my mentor, teaching me how to think like a lawyer, how to develop arguments, and how to identify flaws in opposing viewpoints. She pushed me harder than any instructor I'd ever had. When I graduated from Lakewood with an associate's degree, she gave me a letter of recommendation and a list of law schools that provided need-based scholarships. "Don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of," she told me, "especially not family." I applied to Suffolk University Law School in Boston. It wasn't Yale, but it was a renowned university with a strong regional reputation. I wrote an honest application essay about being underestimated, proving myself, and wanting to represent those who didn't have a voice. In March, I received an admission letter with a full scholarship and contacted my parents to tell them. "Law school?" My mother's voice sounded skeptical. "You're not serious." "Suffolk offered me a full ride," I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. "I start in the fall." There was a lengthy delay before my father came on the phone. "Look, honey, we understand that you want to improve yourself, but law school, you battled just to get through high school. This will be a major waste of your time and their resources." "I have a 3.8 GPA from Lakewood," I told them. "Community college," my mother said. "It's not the same thing. Claire would never say this because she is too sweet, but we are concerned you are setting yourself up for a disastrous failure. Law school is quite challenging. Perhaps you should think of something more practical." I hung up before they could say anything further, then put my belongings into my 12-year-old Honda and traveled to Boston. Suffolk law was harsh, and my parents were right. It was really demanding. I studied 70 hours a week, lived on ramen and peanut butter, and slept very little. The other students came from better schools and backgrounds. They had family connections and work chances set up before the first semester finished, but I had only Professor Carter's words in my brain, and a strong desire to prove everyone wrong. In my first year, instead of traveling home for Thanksgiving, I worked as a hostess at a downtown restaurant. My family did not pay me a visit, nor did they make a phone call. My parents sent a card containing a $70 bill and a letter that said, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." Claire, meantime, had been promoted to junior partner at her New York business. My mother's Facebook page was filled with photographs of Claire at charity galas, winning awards, and being interviewed for legal journals. The golden kid continued to shine, and I studied harder. By the second year, something changed. The law began to make sense in a way it hadn't before. I could see the patterns, arguments, and methods. My contracts professor, a severe woman called Dr. Helen Vasquez, approached me after class one day and remarked, "You have exceptional analytical skills. Have you considered applying for law review?" I hadn't. Legal review was for top students, those bound for Supreme Court clerkships and large legal firms, not community college transfers working 3 part-time jobs. "You should apply," Dr. Vasquez said. "I'll write you a recommendation." I completed a law review. I also earned the Academic Excellence Award for second-year students and got a summer internship at a small criminal defense company. When I called to tell my parents, my mother responded, "That's great, honey. Claire recently got engaged. He's a Harvard MBA and they're planning a spring wedding." Of course they were. I graduated in my 3rd year, summa cum laude. I ranked 3rd in my class, had 2 job offers from reputable Boston businesses, and the bar test was slated for July. I prepared like my life depended on it, and in many respects it did. My parents did not attend my law school graduation since Claire's wedding was the same weekend, and that naturally took priority. I stood in the audience, surrounded by classmates and their proud families, experiencing the familiar ache of being forgotten. Professor Carter traveled here from Ohio, sat in the 2nd row, and applauded when they announced my name. She then took me to dinner at an Italian restaurant in the North End. "Your family does not deserve you," she observed over spaghetti. "But that doesn't matter. You did it for yourself." "I did it to prove them wrong," I said. She grinned. That works too. I moved into a modest studio apartment in Cambridge and worked as a clerk at Morrison & Associates while I waited for the bar test results, which came in November. At 6:47 a.m., I received an email informing me that I had not only passed but also scored in the top 5%. I grieved on my flat floor before calling my parents. "That's excellent, honey," my mother responded, her voice preoccupied. "Your father and I are on our way to Claire's house. She is pregnant. We'll help with the nursery." I passed the bar exam. "Yes, you mentioned that. We're really proud. Listen, can we call you back? We're nearly to her house." They never phoned back. Morrison & Associates specialized in criminal defense. The job was hard, the hours were long, and the pay was poor, but I loved it. I enjoyed the challenge of developing a case, the excitement of cross-examination, and the gratification of getting acquittals for clients whom others had written off. My supervisor, Robert Taylor, was a grizzled veteran who had been practicing for 40 years. He taught me how to read juries, uncover the narrative in the evidence, and fight for individuals who had been abandoned by the system. "You're very good at this," he said after I won my first trial. "You have instincts that most lawyers never develop." I worked every case like it was the most important one of my career, building a reputation for being thorough, relentless, and prepared. Other attorneys began referring clients to me, and judges began recognizing me in court. My family had no idea. We spoke maybe 5 times a year, brief phone calls where my mother updated me on Claire's accomplishments and asked perfunctory questions about my small law job. Then came the Fitzgerald case, in which Daniel Fitzgerald was accused of embezzling $3 million from his employer, a mid-sized investment firm. The evidence was damning: wire transfers in his name, forged documents, and a paper trail that appeared to lead directly to him. The prosecution was confident, and the media had already convicted him. Frank gave the case to me. "This is your opportunity," he said. "High profile, plenty of attention. Win this, and you'll make a name for yourself." I spent 4 months preparing, reviewing every document, bank statement, and email, hiring forensic accountants, tracking down witnesses, and gradually identifying inconsistencies, patterns that didn't fit, and timelines that didn't make sense. The trial, which lasted 2 weeks, was presided over by Judge Evelyn West, a former prosecutor who was known for being fair but exacting and did not tolerate incompetence. Every day the courtroom was packed with reporters and legal observers, and I was able to dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece. After a 6-hour jury deliberation, Judge West summoned me to the bench. I demonstrated how the wire transfers had been manipulated, the documents had been backdated, and the true embezzler was Daniel's supervisor, who had fled to the Cayman Islands 3 days prior to the start of the investigation. "Miss Harper," she remarked, "that was the best defense I've seen in my 30 years on this bench. You have an outstanding future ahead of you." The legal world noticed, and I began to receive calls from larger firms, offers of partnership, and invitations to speak at conferences. As my business increased, I moved to a better apartment. I could finally afford to eat something other than ramen. I still didn't tell my family the details. What was the point? 2 years after the Fitzgerald case, my reputation had solidified. I was handling increasingly complex cases, mentoring junior attorneys at Morrison & Associates, and Frank had officially named me a partner. Harper and Morrison had a nice ring to it. My relationship with my family remained surface level, with obligatory holiday calls, generic birthday cards, and the occasional Facebook interaction where my mother would comment on Claire's post but ignore mine. Claire herself seemed to view me with mild curiosity, as if I were a distant cousin she vaguely remembered meeting once. In March, I received a wedding invitation on heavy cardstock with gold embossing. Her husband Ethan came from old money, and they had 2 children, a brownstone in the village and a summer house in the Hamptons. My cousin Sophie was getting married in Connecticut, and the entire extended family would be there. I hadn't seen most of them in over a decade, but something compelled me to RSVP. The wedding was at a country club I'd driven past 1,000 times growing up, but never entered. I wore a navy dress and minimal jewelry, attempting to blend in. My plan was to show up, congratulate Sophie, and leave before the reception ended. I was standing at the bar when Claire approached me. She was stunning in a rose-colored gown, her blonde hair perfectly styled, diamonds glittering at her throat. "There you are," she said, her voice warm but her eyes calculating. "We've barely seen you in years. What have you been up to?" "Working," I responded simply. "Still at that little firm in Boston." She sipped her champagne. "That's sweet. Ethan and I were just talking we should come visit someday and see how the other half lives." The condescension was slight but undeniable. I felt like I was 16 again, serving appetizers as everyone admired the golden kid. My mother entered, escorted by two of her friends. Rachel was just inquiring about my children. Claire is a partner at Strickland & Morris in Manhattan, and here is my younger daughter, who works as a lawyer in Boston. Some sort of legal work, I said, and my mother waved her hand dismissively. You know I don't understand all the details, honey. You deal with criminals or something. One of her pals looked uneasy, while the other, a woman called Patricia, smiled. Oh, are you a public defender? That is such noble work. I'm a criminal defense attorney in private practice, I said. Same thing. Really? My mother spoke. Claire laughed. Come on, Mom. There's a significant distinction between public defenders and real criminal lawyers. No offense, she continued, glancing at me. I'm sure you're doing fine. Something inside me snapped. I'd been broken before and put myself back together, but this was different. This was the last straw after years of being ridiculed, ignored, and undervalued. Actually, I responded, my voice calm. I just won the Morey case last month. The newspapers described it as the biggest white-collar victory in Massachusetts this year. Claire's face did not change. That is nice. My mother touched my arm. I am sure that felt like a huge deal. We're proud of your efforts here. Now let us go locate your father. He wants photos of both of his girls. They went away, leaving me at the bar with Patricia, who offered me a sympathetic grin. For what it's worth, she murmured gently. I think it's amazing. Criminal law is quite complicated. I thanked her and requested another drink. I stayed for the rest of the reception, watching my family interact, listening to them praise Claire's accomplishments while carefully avoiding asking me about mine. When I got home that night, I sat in my living room and made a decision. I was done trying to earn their respect. I was done waiting for them to see me, and I was not going to let them diminish me any longer. 4 months after the wedding, I received a call from Andrew Collins, an attorney I'd previously worked with on a few cases. He seemed concerned. Are you sitting down? What's wrong? He inquired. Someone filed a complaint with the State Bar Association against you. My blood ran cold. They say you fabricated your qualifications, that you never truly passed the bar test. You've been practicing law illegally for years. That's insane. Who is in your family? Andrew said. Your parents and sister filed a united complaint. They have documents and affidavits. They claim you lied about graduating from law school and forged your bar passage certificate. I couldn't breathe. What did they do? There will be a hearing. The disciplinary committee wishes to investigate. This is serious. If they believe the charges, you may lose your license. You could face criminal charges. I sat down hard on my couch. My family had truly done this. They sought to destroy my career because I had finally accomplished something they could not ignore. I need you to represent me, I explained. Already working on it, Andrew said. However, this is awful. Even false charges might harm your reputation. We need to figure out why they are doing this. I understood why. I'd stopped being invisible. I'd succeeded in a way they couldn't ignore, and my daughter's disappointment had become uncontrollable. The documentation my family provided was extensive. They'd gathered old high school report cards with my mediocre grades, found people willing to sign affidavits claiming I'd always struggled academically, and even obtained records from Lakewood Community College, though they conveniently left out the part about my perfect GPA. Claire's statement was quite thorough. She said I had been envious of her success for years and had begun imitating a lawyer to compete with her. She stated, I became delusional, creating a fantasy life where I was a successful attorney instead of accepting my limitations. My parents described me as confused, unpredictable, and someone who had always struggled to discern between fact and fantasy. They were concerned about any clients I could be fooling and wanted the committee to do a thorough investigation. It was character assassination disguised as civic duty. Andrew examined everything with increasing incredulity. This is vindictive, he stated. They're trying to ruin you. Can they? No, he said firmly. Because everything they're claiming is false. You graduated from SUFFK. You passed the bar. You're a licensed attorney in good standing. This is harassment. Then why have a hearing at all? Because the Bar Association has to investigate all complaints. It's procedure. But once they see the evidence, your actual transcripts, your bar exam results, your court records, this will be dismissed immediately. I nodded, but horror gripped my gut. My family had gone to burned earth. If the hearing went public, the allegations alone may harm my image. Clients can lose faith. Judges may see me differently. Everything I created may shatter because my family couldn't bear watching me prosper. The hearing was planned for Tuesday morning in October. My stomach churned as I arrived at the State Bar Association headquarters with Andrew. We planned attentively. Every document was categorized and every truth confirmed. My family was already present. My parents sat together, nicely clothed, with somber attitudes. Claire sat alongside them in a charcoal suit, looking every bit the accomplished lawyer. They had brought their own lawyer, a man from Connecticut who specialized in professional misconduct cases. They were truly dedicated to harming me. The three-person panel entered. Judge West, David Grant, and Detective James Walker. I felt a slight thrill of relief when I saw Judge West. She recognized me. She'd seen my work, but I knew she'd have to remain unbiased. The hearing started. My parents' attorney presented their argument with amazing theatricality. He constructed an image of a distraught young woman who had invented her entire career. He labeled me desperate, crazy, and dangerous. Claire testified. She talked about how I'd always been the troublesome child, how I struggled in school, and how worried the family was when I began professing to be a lawyer. Claire continued, her voice thick with fake anguish. She even told people she had won major cases. She detailed the intricate trials in detail. It was painful to witness. My mother testified. She discussed my rough background, academic challenges, and perceived separation from reality. My father testified. He stated they attempted to help me, but I refused. He said submitting the lawsuit was the most difficult thing they'd ever done, but they felt ethically required. Throughout it all, I sat quietly. Andrew told me not to respond or engage. Allow them to talk. Allow them to feel assured. Then it was our time. Judge West stared at me. Miss Harper, you've been surprisingly silent during the proceedings. Would you like to respond to these allegations? I met her eyes. Your Honor, I'd like to let my record speak for itself. Andrew started presenting our evidence. My SUFK transcript indicating that I have graduated summa cum laude, my bar test passing certificate. I am licensed to practice law in Massachusetts. Character recommendations from instructors, co-workers and judges. David Grant leafed over the materials, his face ranging from skepticism to perplexity. Then Judge West opened my case file. I kept a meticulous record of every case I fought, every motion I filed and every client I represented. She stopped breathing for a moment. Her eyes expanded. She gazed up at me with something resembling recognition. Miss Harper, she said hesitantly. You argued before me last year about the Fitzgerald case. The room became quiet. I remember you quite clearly, Judge West went on. I called it the most brilliant defense I'd seen in 30 years of sitting on the bench. Why is your family claiming you're not a licensed attorney? My mother's face had lost its color. Claire's mouth opened and closed, then opened again. My father clutched the table's edge. Andrew stood. Your Honor, if I may, the evidence plainly reveals that Miss Harper is not only a licensed attorney, but an unusually accomplished one. She graduated with honors from Suffolk University Law School, passed the bar on her first attempt, and scored in the top 5%. She has argued hundreds of successful cases, many in your courtroom and others around the state. He put another stack of paperwork on the table. These are records of Ms. Harper's cases over the past 4 years. Wins, settlements, judicial commendations. She's built an impeccable reputation in the legal community. Detective James Walker spoke up. I'm confused. The complaint suggests Ms. Harper has no legal education and has been committing fraud. But this evidence clearly contradicts that because the complaint is false, Andrew told me. Deliberately, maliciously false. David Grant stared at my family. Did you verify any of this before filing your complaint? My parents' lawyer jumbled his paperwork. We relied on our client's good faith assertions. Good faith? Andrew asked, his voice rising. They filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association attempting to destroy an attorney's career and livelihood based on high school report cards and personal animosity. There's no good faith here. Judge West's countenance had shifted from confusion to rage. Miss Harper, I need to understand something. Your family has made serious allegations against you. Allegations that, if true, would constitute criminal fraud. But the evidence shows you're a highly qualified, successful attorney. Can you explain this discrepancy? This was the moment. I had remained silent through their accusations, falsehoods, and attempts to ruin me. Now it was time to talk. My family, I blurted out, my tone firm, has always been very clear about what they think of me. I was the disappointment daughter, the one who couldn't measure up to my brilliant older sister. When I went to community college, they considered it proof of my limitations. When I got into law school, they told me I was wasting everyone's time. When I passed the bar, my mother was too busy celebrating my sister's pregnancy to care. I glanced straight at my parents. I didn't tell you about my success because I knew you weren't interested. You didn't attend my law school graduation. You didn't congratulate me when I won the Fitzgerald case, despite the fact that it was featured in the Boston Globe. You never inquired about my job, life, or successes, therefore I didn't keep you up to speed on my profession. Claire attempted to interject, but Judge West raised her hand. I went to a family wedding 6 months ago, I told them. My mother described me as someone who does some type of legal work with criminals, and when I attempted to explain what I do, my sister laughed and claimed it wasn't the same as genuine criminal lawyers, so I stopped trying to get you to see me. My father began to speak, but I hadn't finished. This complaint isn't about concern for the legal profession or protecting the public. This is about a family that can't handle the fact that the daughter they dismissed, the one they considered a failure, actually succeeded without your help, without your approval, without your acknowledgement. The room was totally quiet. David Grant glanced at my family with unmistakable disdain. You filed a fraudulent complaint with this committee because you were embarrassed by your daughter's success. No, my mother said swiftly. We genuinely believed. You believed what? Andrew interrupted. That your daughter somehow fooled the Massachusetts Bar Association, multiple judges, and hundreds of clients over 5 years? She defended sophisticated legal matters without anybody recognizing she was unqualified. Judge West, a distinguished judge with 3 decades of expertise, was unable to distinguish between a legitimate lawyer and a fake. Detective James Walker cleared his throat. For the record, submitting a fake complaint to a state regulatory authority is a criminal. It is also possibly defamatory. Claire's face had become white. We didn't mean this wasn't supposed to. What? I inquired gently. You didn't think there would be consequences. You thought you could destroy my career and face no repercussions? Judge West closed my file. Her look was stern. This hearing has finished. Miss Harper, the committee finds no evidence to substantiate these charges. Your qualifications are immaculate. Your record is great. And this complaint looks to be malicious and without substance. She gazed at my family. I want to be clear. You intended to use this committee as a weapon against a licensed attorney in good standing. You have squandered state resources and this panel's time, and your unfounded charges have the potential to harm Miss Harper's image. This is unacceptable. David Grant nodded. I practice in New York as well as Massachusetts. Miss Harper, he added, turning to Claire. I'll report this event to the New York Bar Association. They take professional behavior extremely seriously. Claire's eyes widened. You can't. I didn't do anything wrong. I just believed what my parents. She was saying. You're an attorney, David Grant said coldly. You should have known better than to sign an affidavit making serious allegations without verifying the facts. That's basic legal ethics. Detective James Walker stood. Mr. and Mrs. Harper, I'm going to need you to come with me. Filing a false report is a criminal matter. My mother gave a gasp. My father attempted to argue. Their lawyer sought to interfere, but Detective Walker remained unmoved. Judge West addressed me personally. Miss Harper, on behalf of the committee, I apologize for the hardship you've gone through. Throughout this process, you have maintained a high level of professionalism, and your reputation in the legal world has not been harmed. Thank you, Your Honor. As the panel stood to go, Judge West halted. One more thing. I'm proposing you for the Massachusetts Bar Association's Professional Excellence Award. The nomination has been languishing for several months, and after reading your documentation today, I am confident you deserve it. I felt tears approaching, but I kept them back. I would not weep in front of my family. Not now. The fallout was quick and harsh. Detective Walker did bring my folks in for questioning. While they were not eventually prosecuted, the inquiry was extensive and humiliating. The local Connecticut newspaper published an article on the fake complaint. My mother's acquaintance has ceased phoning. Claire received disciplinary action from the New York Bar Association for signing a false affidavit. She received a formal reprimand and was required to complete additional ethics training. More damaging was the blow to her reputation. Her actions became widely known in legal circles. Clients began asking uncomfortable questions. Her company recommended she take a leave of absence. My parents' lawyer issued a letter seeking to clarify that everything had been a misunderstanding. Andrew reacted with a letter stating our plan to bring a defamation complaint unless they publicly apologized and fully retracted all charges. They cooperated within a week. The public apology was brief and clearly unpleasant for them to make. It appeared in the Boston Globe and numerous legal periodicals, stating that their complaint was unjustified and that I was a licensed and experienced attorney. It was insufficient to heal the harm to our connection. However, our relationship had been broken for quite some time. 3 months later, I was presented with the Massachusetts Bar Association's Professional Excellence Award in a ceremony attended by over 300 attorneys, judges, and legal professionals. Judge West delivered it personally, speaking about my devotion, competence, and honesty. My family wasn't there. I didn't invite them. Professor Carter flew in from Ohio. She sat in the front row and cheered when they announced my name. Afterward, we had supper at the same Italian restaurant in the North End where we'd celebrated my law school graduation. I told you, she continued, raising her glass. Don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of, especially not family. You were right, I said. I usually am. She grinned. So, what's next? Big firm offer? Political career? I shake my head. I'm staying where I am. Morrison and Associates is where I belong. Small firm. Big impact. Frank's talking about making me a named partner. Harper and Morrison. Professor Carter mused. It did. A year has passed. My practice grew. I won more cases, took on more challenging clients, and coached young attorneys in the same manner that Professor Carter and Frank had mentored me. My parents called once 6 months after the hearing. My mother's voice sounded stiff and professional. We wanted to check in, she told us. See how you're doing. I'm fine, I said. That is good. Your father and I have been thinking about what occurred. We may have overreacted. May I have overreacted? Not that we were incorrect or are sorry. I may have overreacted, as if they were unhappy about something insignificant rather than attempting to damage my career. Is there anything else? I asked. A prolonged pause. Claire is suffering. The censure had a negative impact on her professional standing. She may have to leave her firm. Oh, there it was. They weren't phoning to apologize. They were calling because the golden kid had been tarnished and someone needed to be blamed. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. I didn't feel guilty. I felt sad for Claire. She'd been trained to believe she was superior to everyone else, and now she was seeing that her actions had repercussions. We were hoping you would talk to some individuals, my mother said. Use your contacts, help her locate a new job. The audacity was amazing. No, I answered simply. But she's your sister, my mother said. Family helps family. Family, I said slowly, does not file fake accusations to damage each other's professions. The family does not sign papers saying that their daughter is insane. Family does not spend years making someone feel worthless just to beg for favors when it is convenient. My father got on the phone. You are being petty. We committed a mistake, but keeping grudges is unproductive. Claire needs assistance. Claire is an adult lady and a licensed attorney. She made choices. She signed court paperwork containing fraudulent claims. These decisions have repercussions. That is not my problem to repair. After everything we did for you, my mother continued, her voice rising with familiar outrage. We raised you. We backed you. You gave me $3,500 for college, I told you. You paid Claire $55,000 each year for Yale. You attended all her functions but none of mine. You applauded her accomplishments while dismissing mine. You told folks I conducted some kind of legal work while talking about her collaboration. So no, you can't claim you backed me. We're still your parents, my father responded. That has to mean something. It does, I said. It implies I'll be nice when we encounter each other at family gatherings. It implies I will not sue you for defamation, even if I have grounds. But it does not imply I owe you anything more than basic civility. The line went quiet for a long time. We tried, my mother eventually remarked, her voice chilly, to reach out and mend things. You can choose to be obstinate and unforgiving, but don't expect us to continue trying. I won't, I said and hung up. The phone conversation left me startled, but also oddly emancipated. For years, a part of me had thought they'd see me, truly see me. That hope was now gone, and its absence felt like release. Andrew phoned the next day. Your mother's attorney contacted us, he explained. They want to settle possible claims quietly. They're offering a big payment if you sign an NDA covering the entire affair. How substantial? He mentioned a figure that made me blink. 6 figures. Enough to pay off my condo, expand my practice, and never worry about money again. What do you think? I asked. I think they're scared, Andrew replied. They scared you right about this, talk about it publicly and damage their reputation even more. The money is to buy your silence. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Tell them no. I am not signing anything. If I want to discuss what happened, I will. They can't pay me to pretend it didn't happen. Andrew chuckled. I had hoped you'd say that. For the record, I believe you're making the proper decision. Some things are more important than money. The talk reminded me of why I went into criminal defense in the first place. Money and power should not be allowed to hide the truth, and standing up for what's right often requires sacrificing what's comfortable. My relatives tried to purchase my quiet in the same manner that they sought to destroy my career by presuming I was weak enough to accept anything they offered. They were both incorrect. 2 years after the hearing, I got an unexpected email. It came from Claire's personal address, not her work account, and the subject line was, "I'm sorry." I gazed at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading it, but my curiosity won out. Claire's email was long, meandering, and shockingly honest. She described how she had lost her position at the company, how her marriage to Ethan was falling apart, and how she had spent the previous 2 years in therapy trying to figure out why she had helped destroy her own sister's career. She didn't make excuses. She acknowledged she was envious when she saw me at the wedding, confident and accomplished in ways she hadn't anticipated. She said that she had always seen me as inferior, as our parents had taught her, and that seeing me excel challenged her entire identity as the golden child. I told myself I was protecting the legal profession, she said. But I was really just trying to bring you down because I couldn't take you being excellent at something. Because if you could succeed despite everything, what does it say about me? I had every advantage, while you had none, yet you nevertheless became a greater lawyer than I will ever be. The email concluded with a simple request. I am not seeking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I needed you to know how sorry I am. I sincerely apologize. What I did was inexcusable, and I will live the rest of my life regretting it. I read the email 3 times before closing my laptop and going for a walk along the Charles River. Claire's apology was most likely sincere, as losing everything forced individuals to realize their true selves. Apologies, no matter how heartfelt, did not change actions, the hearing, the charges, or the attempt to ruin everything I'd created. I considered responding, writing something nice and forgiving, since that is what a greater person would do. But I didn't want to be the larger guy anymore. I erased the email without replying. 5 years after the hearing, I was invited to speak at Suffolk Law School's graduation, and Professor Carter was in the audience, beaming with delight. I stood at the stage, staring at 200 graduating law students and recognizing my younger self in their eager expressions. Some of you come from families of attorneys, I remarked. Some of you have connections, opportunities, and advantages. That is fantastic. Use them well. I paused, noticing the pupils in the rear rows who were exhausted and apprehensive. But not all of you have those things. Several of you are first-generation attorneys. Some of you work 3 jobs to pay for education. Some of you have family that don't comprehend your accomplishments or why they are important. The exhausted pupils sat up somewhat taller. I want to tell you something. Your road may be more difficult, but this does not diminish the legitimacy of your accomplishment. Actually, it makes it more amazing. You earned whatever you've accomplished. No one handed it to you. No one helped you along the way. You did it on your own. I stared straight at a young woman in the 3rd row, who was silently weeping. And keep this in mind when people attempt to make you feel small or undeserving for what you've accomplished. Their perception of you is not accurate. Your art represents the truth. Your cases are true. Your license represents the truth. Hold on to that. The applause was tremendous. Afterwards, scores of kids came up to thank me, and the tearful woman in the 3rd row hugged me passionately. My parents didn't come today, she was whispering. They said law school was a waste of time for someone like me. Then prove them wrong, I said. Not for them. For you. She nodded, wiping her eyes, and I recognized in her the same drive I felt when I was 16, serving appetizers as everyone admired my sister. 10 years after the hearing, my business had grown to include 15 attorneys. We specialized in criminal defense, defending individuals who couldn't afford the huge corporate companies but deserved quality counsel nevertheless. We won more cases than we lost, and we changed people's lives. Frank Morrison retired and spent his days fishing in Maine, periodically contacting me to gloat about the size of his most recent catch. Professor Carter died quietly in her sleep, leaving me a note that simply said, "I always knew you'd make it. I am proud of you." I never reconciled with my parents, who stopped sending Christmas cards after a few years. I learned from extended relatives that they had relocated to Florida, that my mother's health was deteriorating, and that they had become somewhat reclusive. I felt nothing about it. No rage, grief, or remorse. They were just individuals I used to know. Claire wrote me periodic emails throughout the years, with updates on her life, references of treatment, and modest efforts at connection. I never answered, and these eventually ceased as well. I dated, had romances, and created a life full of people who respected me and meaningful work. I also acquired a rescue dog called Justice, who slept under my desk as I worked on briefs. I went to locations I never thought I'd see, I mentored young attorneys who reminded me of myself, and I was content. One afternoon while arguing in court, I saw someone sitting in the back row of the gallery, an older woman with thin gray hair and a familiar face. My mother. For a brief moment, our gazes connected, and she appeared smaller and frailer than I recalled. She did not grin or wave, she simply sat there watching me work. I went back to the judge and resumed my case. I had won the motion, and when I looked back, she had left. I never found out why she arrived. Perhaps she understood what she had missed. It didn't matter if she wanted to see for herself what I had become, or if she was simply curious. I stepped out of the courthouse into the bright Boston afternoon. Justice waiting in the car, a celebratory meal with my colleagues arranged for that evening, and a dozen cases on my desk that required my attention. I had made a life worth living. I had proven everyone wrong who had ever questioned me. I had succeeded not because of my family, but in spite of them, and that was the finest payback of all. They sought to ruin me, erase everything I'd done, and reduce me back to the disappointed daughter who was aware of her limits. They failed. I was Attorney Harper, now a partner, award winner, mentor and advocate. I was the woman who would fight the Fitzgerald case. I was the lawyer who Judge West described as brilliant. I was precisely who I'd always wanted to be, and I got there all by myself.